Hello, and welcome again to this show. I'm thinking about calling it something to do with reason, like Pacific reasoning, because I'm on the Pacific coast and my last name is Pace. I don't know how more Pacific I can be about that. Look, the thing you have to realize about puns is that there is no such thing as an inherently good pun, so we just shouldn't make them ever. No, I'm just kidding. Puns used to actually be a sign of quick-witted intelligence, and they weren't looked down upon until rather recently throughout our history. But let's not talk about that. Instead of puns, let's talk about guns. Oh no. Guns. Ugh. That's a tricky subject. Is it though? Is it really? Alright, well let's just go into it, like guns blazing. So why do we have guns? Well, we have guns because our Second Amendment basically protects the right for us to have guns. Our Second Amendment reads something along these lines. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So this means the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. So what does that look like? Does that mean that all weapons are allowed? Well, no, obviously not. There's provisions to it. So not all guns are legal for civilians to have, and but some guns are. So what kinds of guns are allowed? Well, a lot. You had hunting rifles and shotguns and handguns, revolvers, and all that kind of stuff. But what about these infamous assault rifles? Well, civilians can't have assault rifles. Just gonna break it to you. Nope, sorry. The American colonies, back in time immemorial, before any of us were born, decided that the best way to help a people not be overtaken by a tyrannical ruler was to let the people have weapons, which was kind of a novel idea back then. Just giving everybody weapons, essentially, basically is its own sort of check for the checks and balances of the government. And America was established with lots of checks and balances in place. So, we have the three-part executive, judicial, legislative branches of government. Well, we also have people having guns, the common people having guns and weapons as a way to protect against tyranny. Along that note, you would think that a lot more people would own guns. Only around 30 to 33% right now, according to Pew Research. And another study done by the University of Chicago estimated that in 1973, nearly half of the nation owned guns. So less and less people are owning guns themselves, which, I don't know. I find that fascinating. That's interesting. So if you have the right to own a gun, why wouldn't you want guns? Is it because lots of people think that gun violence is this huge problem in America? I don't think so. If 30 to 33% of the American population owns a gun, that's 33% of 325.7 million people. That's 97 million people. Almost 100 million people own guns. And only 30,000 people a year die from guns. That includes suicide. So, that's interesting. Another thing people don't talk about when talking about guns is the fact that guns save a lot of people, because our law enforcement has guns, and a third of our nation owns a gun. And so the CDC estimate that 500,000 to 3 million people are saved by guns a year. So that can be the usage of the gun, defensive usage or even just showing a gun. Those are interesting statistics that we think we should talk about and be aware of it. Conservatively, 500,000 people are saved by guns every year. 30,000 people are killed by guns every year. 100 million people own guns in the United States. So which one is a bigger deal right now? So think about it. If 30,000 people are killed, but 500,000 people are saved, if you decrease the amount of guns, which numbers will change? Will the deaths go down? And will the people saved go down? Interestingly enough, the strictest gun laws, the places where guns are scarcest for the common people, are the cities where gun violence is higher. So that's an interesting correlation. Not that that's a causation. We should keep those separate. Also, if we get rid of guns, just in general, for everybody, doesn't that kind of create a monopoly for two entities, the government and criminals? Because we can make laws for guns, but if criminals want guns, they're going to get guns. So that's just some stuff to think about when it comes to guns in general. But what we really want to talk about is the AR-15 and assault rifles and bump stocks and high-capacity magazines and background checks. Background checks. Yes, we need background checks. I hear all this stuff all the time, but okay. For the record, or for context, I guess is more accurate, I'm a Marine Corps reservist. I've done nearly 6 years. I started off as an aviation ordnanceman, where I would load rockets, missiles, guns, and stuff. That's not the technical term, and stuff. I would load these things, ordnance, things that blow up on helicopters. So I'm very familiar with those types of weapons. And I'm currently now, for the last several years, I've been a small arms repair technician, in which I handle and maintenance and issue and fix M9 pistols, M16s, M4s. So I know guns, and I own guns myself. So, and I'm not inexperienced when it comes to guns. So I've bought a gun, I've worked with guns, I fix guns, etc., etc., etc. I'm not an expert, but I'm qualified to talk about it because I know what I'm talking about. So when I hear people say assault rifle in reference to the AR-15, it makes me very frustrated because it's wrong. An AR-15 is not an assault rifle. An AR-15, it's a lightweight magazine-fed, gas-operated semi-automatic rifle. AR stands for Armalite, not assault rifle. It does not fit the definition of assault rifle because it does not have a selector switch that allows it to fire more than one round per trigger pull. A semi-automatic weapon means that you pull the trigger and one bullet comes out, no matter how long you hold the trigger down for. An M16 has a 3-round burst function. Formerly, it was an automatic function. That meant when you pulled down the trigger and you held it, it would continue to fire until you let go of the trigger. That's what automatic means. So a machine gun, an M249, when you pull down the trigger, it will continue to fire until you let go of the trigger. An AR-15 does not do that. So there is another term that the AR-15 sort of does fit. It's a legislative term, though, and that's assault weapon. So I guess they use this in terms of like a weapon that you can use to assault people with. It's not really a technical term. It's kind of vague, like a semi-automatic firearm capable of accepting a detachable magazine. Well, that's a pistol, too. Pistols have detachable magazines, and they're semi-automatic. People know that, right? Like, regular handguns are semi-automatic. Are those assault weapons? This whole list, like, there's nothing that we have that civilians have that fits the whole list. This is the list that I got from a reference from Wikipedia. I know, Wikipedia, but I mean, come on, everybody looks at Wikipedia. This is what the common people are using. This is why it's so frustrating. Semi-automatic firearm, capable of accepting a detachable magazine, folding or telescoping stock, a pistol grip that protrudes conspicuously beneath the action. That's also just a pistol. A bayonet lug, threaded barrel, grenade launcher, barrel shroud. Okay, yeah, so some ARs have a threaded barrel. You could put a silencer on it, but so do pistols. Grenade launcher? Civilians can't own grenade launchers. I don't think the AR-15 is built to accept a grenade launcher. And if it is, that's irrelevant because you cannot have a grenade launcher. But okay. So anyway, yeah, okay, maybe the AR-15 can be considered an assault weapon. But so can a lot of other weapons that we don't consider assault weapons. So the argument for the AR-15 being banned because it's an assault rifle or assault weapon, they're not good arguments. They're really not. And so the next one is, well, why do civilians need an AR-15? Well, okay, let's just think about this. The government tries to come and do something terrible, and the civilians feel like they need to fight back against the military. Doesn't it stand to reason that having a weapon that's comparable, at least, to the military's would give them a fighting chance? I mean, so let's say 2 million versus 100 million, but we have tanks and missiles and guns and helicopters, and civilians just have guns. Yeah. I don't know how well that's going to go. People would definitely die, but, the more civilians that own guns, the better their chances of surviving, like, an assault. So, if we're really taking the heart of the Second Amendment for what it is, we want people to have guns to protect against anything that would threaten the way of life that we consider to be American. So, civilians should have AR-15s for that reason. And AR-15s are not like the most powerful weapons out there. They're definitely higher caliber rifles that you can own. So that doesn't really work either. What about bump stocks? Yeah, bump stocks, if you don't know, use the recoil of the weapon to increase the firing rate. So you can kind of mimic an automatic weapon. In that case, yeah, sure, I'll give you that. Maybe we don't need bump stocks. Again, though, if the government comes for you, you're going to need all the help you can get. So that one can go either way, but, I'm totally for, maybe we don't need bump stocks, but is that going to decrease the amount of violent crime? No. May decrease using bump stocks in very specific cases. Background checks, yeah. Okay, so when you say we need background checks, do you mean we need to implement background checks, or what? Because when you say that, it makes you sound silly. Because if you've ever purchased a gun from a licensed, reputable dealer, you have to go through a background check. Shall I read off what you have to not have on your record in order to get a gun? The legit law, and you can go look this up, says, it shall be unlawful, 1, has been convicted in any court of a crime punishable by imprisonment for a year or more, 2, is a fugitive of the law, 3, uses or is addicted to illegal drugs, 4, has been adjudicated as mentally unfit or committed to a mental institution, 5, is an illegal alien, 6, has been discharged from the military dishonorably, 7, has renounced U.S. citizenship, 8, has a court order against them for harassing, stalking, or threatening an intimate partner or child, 9, has been convicted of a misdemeanor. If any of those apply to you, you're not getting a gun. What about the gun show loophole? Well, that's a tricky one. What does that mean? Okay, well, it doesn't have much to do with gun shows specifically. It basically says that if you are an unlicensed dealer, you are not required to do a background check to sell a gun. So you don't really have to be a licensed gun dealer unless you're selling guns for a profit. So if you just want to sell a gun once to your cousin Jimmy, you don't have to put your cousin Jimmy through a background check. Should you? Probably. But you don't have to. So because of this, people can go to gun shows that are not licensed, and you can buy a gun from an unlicensed person at a gun show without a background check. But just because they don't have to doesn't mean they won't. And typically when you go to a gun show, everybody's going to put you through a background check. Just because the common sense thing to do. Now, you can say this, well, how do people still get guns then? Alright, look, if you're a criminal and you want a gun bad enough, you're going to get a gun somehow. If you're a criminal and you want to get into a locked door, you're going to get through that locked door somehow. There's one way to get into the door properly, and there's 5 ways to get into the door improperly. You can break the lock, you can pick the lock, break the door, find another entry point, you can steal the key. there's more angles to get around a thing if you can't just open the door. If you can't just go buy a gun, there's lots of avenues of approach to get around it, and we really just need to make it more difficult for bad people to get guns. But we've made it really difficult already. A dishonorable discharge, mentally unfit, a stalker, physically harassing, domestic abuse, a felony. Like, these people shouldn't have guns. We know that. These laws have been in effect for a long time, but why are people still getting guns that don't need guns? Well, if the last incident was any indication of the failure of the system, it could be said that a lot of people didn't do their job. So are more laws going to make people do their job if they didn't do their job before? I don't think so. But maybe they would. Maybe more laws, and if you go to jail because you got a tip and you didn't do anything about it, maybe that would help. We could effectively reduce the amount of people that want to go into law enforcement, because you can get penalized for failing to see a proper tip, a real legitimate threat. But isn't that what we train them for? Isn't that what we pay them our taxpayer dollars for? Like, yeah, totally. With you. Like, people need to do their jobs better. Do you see the irony in that you are kind of asking the people with guns to do a better job of stopping the people with guns? So what if you had a gun and you knew how to use it and you were trained? I think we can have an intelligent discussion about this, but I think it starts with knowing where the facts are and being willing to discuss it in a way that's civil and doesn't, throw everybody off. Yeah, we should do something. But what? What should we do? More education? Less bullying in schools? That's a pretty big one. People didn't feel isolated. Maybe they'd be less likely to go take out their anger and their unresolved issues by shooting a bunch of people. It's stuff to think about. What's the real solution here? 'Cause banning guns, probably not a good idea. Banning one specific gun, just because it looks like an M16, but doesn't operate like an M16 or an M4, that doesn't make any sense. Background checks? We have background checks. Better background checks? Universal background checks? Okay, yeah, sure. Make every single gun purchase ever have to have a background check. Sure. How are you going to enforce that? If I want to go sell Cousin Jimmy a gun, who's going to know? How are we going to enforce that? So that just opens up a whole nother door of, the local law enforcement didn't do their job. The FBI didn't do their job. Well, we're not making it easy. The underground economy doesn't make it easy. So we're looking for someone to blame, and there's not really anyone to blame, because there's way too many problems, and there's way too many people that want to do bad things for reasons, and then they're able to do it because of other reasons. There's no one solution to this, but it's good that we're talking about it, I think. I don't think it's good that we're shoving this agenda about how guns kill so many children. There's so many people dying of other things, preventable things, than guns. So many people. Hundreds of thousands of people every year from things that are preventable, like tobacco and texting and driving. But we don't put shoes on the White House lawn to talk about how many kids die from secondhand smoke and cancer. Should we? What are we going to do about it? It's up for discussion. Let's continue the conversation. Leave your thoughts and your comments in the comment section below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like this video, give it a thumbs down, because any publicity is good publicity. Anyway, till I get my next video posted, stay cool and be reasonable people. Cut. Oh wait, I'm my own cameraman. Jeez.